We now have a panel discussion that will put the focus on what it takes to build a brand that stands the test of time. Please join me in welcoming our distinguished panel on stage. He is Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, Spencer's Retail Limited, RPSG Group. Please welcome Mr. Anuj Singh. Come on, can we have a round of applause from everyone out here? Thank you so much. He is Chief Executive Officer, Amante India Limited. A warm welcome to Deepak Jain. Please put your hands together and welcome Chief Executive Officer, Gravis Foods Private Limited, that's Baskin Robbins, Mr. Mohit Khattar. Let's warmly welcome the Managing Partner, Dadus, Muskan Dadu. Welcome, ma'am. She is Chief Executive Officer and Director, BBlunt. Please put your hands together for Spurti Shetty. Welcome, ma'am. A warm welcome to the Chief Executive Officer, Lakmé Salon Private Limited, Vipul Chaturvedi. And ladies and gentlemen, let's now welcome our most erudite moderator, partner and consumer industry leader, Deloitte India, Anand Ramanathan. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got South Hindustani on stage. It's over to Anand Ramanathan and his co-stars.
Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, thank you, RAI, for bringing all of us together and giving us this opportunity to have a very interesting discussion on how brands are reviving themselves and how do they stay relevant in the evolving consumption context, right, where there are a lot of changes in the market. How is it that brands continue to stay relevant? And therefore, this discussion, which has representation from a large number of industries, will focus on particularly two aspects. Section one will be around looking at consumption itself, right? How are consumers changing? If you look at Gen Zs, we saw it in the morning, about 40 to 50% of various category consumption is now being contributed by them. Similarly, we were to look at various trends, right? Like convenience, like more consciousness towards health, sustainability, looking at tier 2 consumption. There's a lot of change in the marketplace and consumers are evolving. So what are brands doing to keep in step with that? The second section will focus more on internal configurations of the organization itself. So whether it is AI, whether it's data, looking at people, a lot of these are also service businesses where people really play a very important role. Looking at NPD, we've seen that D2C brands and also various other private labels, for example, are giving competition to some of the large mainstream established brands. A lot of categories have unorganized competition now moving into branded play. So given all of these changes, what are some of the changes happening in new product development? And also various other internal organization dimensions, whether it is expansion into tier 2 and building the organization there, looking at maybe also targeting exports. There could be various things that an organization is doing, right? And therefore, we will try and understand what those changes are for the brand to continue to be relevant to the changing consumer. So with that, I'll open the discussion. About 25 minutes each for each of these sections. So it's about a 50-minute discussion. 10 minutes of question and answers at the end. Right, so with that, maybe I start with the one closest to me. So Spurti, she looks at BBlunt. She's the CEO of BBlunt. And hence, it'll be very useful to understand how the consumer is changing when it comes to something like services, beauty services. Over to you, Spurti.
So thank you very much, Anand. And a big congratulations to RAI for their 20th year milestone. And reflecting back on your question, I think in today's times, especially we are in the digital era, I think what we need to recognize is that the power has clearly shifted to the consumer, right? Your brand is no longer owned just by you, it's owned by all your consumers. So, today anyone can kind of build a narrative around your brand even without giving you a chance, even without experiencing your brand. They can probably, compare, read reviews, give reviews, and you are kind of vulnerable, right? That is one big shift that I've seen. And the second thing is, I think less is more. Even in tier 2 cities, gone are the days where people would want over-the-top kind of looks, right? And today, because everyone has access to international trends, whether it's hair, makeup, and I'm talking specifically from the salon context. Less is more. That's one thing. And I would say also because, today the most powerful or the most valuable real estate is your smartphone. People are scrolling apparently at the rate of, 300 feet of content every day, and they're barely giving you 8 seconds of time. So your marketing, because largely we are now doing digital marketing, your marketing has to be really so powerful that, audience is willing to give more than 8 seconds of time. So I think these are the fundamental shifts that I have seen as, a CEO of a brand that typically has consumers who are very easily swayed by social media trends.
Great, thanks for that, Spurti. In fact, now we'll go to the extreme other corner of this panel. So Nikhil, Lakmé, right? So
Vipul.
Sorry, Vipul. Lakmé, that would be another very similar space when it comes to beauty services. So how is it that you see the consumer change, right, and evolve? And what is it that you are doing for the brand to be relevant?
Okay. First and foremost, very proud to represent a brand which has been around for 7 decades, right? So Lakmé started in 1952. Lakmé Salon started in early 1980s. And if you look around, there aren't too many brands which can say that for almost 7 decades, they've been at the podium, right? So as far as we see, the reason why we've managed to remain where we are is because we've been very true to our core proposition of being the trendsetter. Be it Lakmé Salon, it's the way in which every business typically remains successful for long. The fundamentals haven't changed. Where we consumer obsessed earlier, the answer is yes. Are we consumer obsessed now? The answer is yes. Because of that, are we innovating? At that point in time, the innovations could be very different. Now innovations are a little different, but clearly being very, very close to the consumer and then doing things which are required from an innovation point of view, we continue to do. We were and we continue to remain very relevant in the popular culture. If fashion is what Lakmé stands for, then for the last 25 years, we've been sponsoring Lakmé Fashion Weeks. We are also clear that we want either a Lakmé or Lakmé Salon to impact a large part of India. And hence, being affordable, being accessible, continues to remain relevant. Lakmé product you'll find in every pin code. Lakmé Salon is there in 200 plus cities because we always keep that filter also in mind. But what has changed and really changed is how I speak to the consumer and how the media is currently getting consumed. So fundamentals remain the same, but for me to be salient, I used to do XYZ things earlier. They have changed. The media planning, the way in which I speak, a lot of it now is through an influencer. It's not always about brand say. So the way I say it is like broadly, the blue book of success from a Unilever point of view hasn't changed. It has just been refreshed, keeping in mind the reality of today and the consumer of today. And if I talk a little bit more about service, at one point in time, a great service at a salon used to be sufficient. It is still necessary, but not sufficient. Hence, you need to ensure that the experiences become more multi-sensorial. If you come and do a hair service today, it will be an absolute pampering exercise. There are lots of places where technology is coming in handy. So if last time a Spurti came to my salon, I will know what exactly worked for her or what didn't work for her. And next time when Spurti goes and comes back, I will have that information handy with me and then start working on it. So fundamentals remaining the same, but both on media planning as well as using technology to make consumer experiences better are the spaces in which we are moving, and I'm sure most of the industry is moving.
Thanks, Vipul. So we'll stick to women's category itself. So Deepak, over to you. Amante, Deepak heads Amante, so it'll be good to understand how the consumer is evolving for you.
No, in fact, I'll just share certain industry data. Is it working?
Can you hear him? I think you've got
Yeah.
to...
No, very interesting question that how consumers are changing their preferences and how it is helping the industry. So very interestingly, in lingerie, we see that in the past couple of years, or rather after COVID, there is a huge growth. Lingerie as an industry is at a CAGR of 30-35%, unlike any other industry which is bare minimum like 10 or 20%. And the main reason why we are at that growth is because consumer awareness has gone up significantly. You know, a lady who's like 40, 45 years of age now, at her peak when she was 25 years of age, she was not aware of her lingerie needs. She was just aware that, my size is 34, 36. She was not aware of her cup sizes. She was not aware of what undergarment goes with which outerwear. There are various varieties of undergarments. She didn't know it. Thanks to all the digital mediums and all the Instagram and things, the awareness level has gone up significantly. And that's how she is more mature in her buying needs. She knows what he needs in terms of her lingerie or her undergarments, and that's what helping us to kind of cater her well. Same time, the communication channels has gone up significantly. Like we have, as he also mentioned, we have multiple mediums to connect with the consumers, and that's what we are able to educate them as well. So the consumer needs are really expanding, changing rapidly, and that's what helping the industry big time.
Great. So probably not audible. Yeah, so the next thing, we can actually stay on services itself, given that we've covered two services. So Anuj, over to you. A lot of the focus was on products and services. Now from a retail standpoint, what do you think are some of the changing consumer trends which are impacting you? And how is it that you are evolving to, and Spencer's is such an old legacy brand, right? So how are you continuing to stay relevant? Will be very useful to understand.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah. So look, I think before I get into retail, I think, just want to give my 2 pence on what I feel is the changing consumer landscape. And I just, if I rewind when I started my career probably 2 decades ago, for consumers really, there were 3 distinct choices. Either you went for convenience, so what's my nearest place where I can get a particular product, or you had a positioning which was around affordability, so I could afford this, so this is what it is. Or you looked at your quality parameter, so I want a quality product. And very often when you were choosing one, you were making a trade-off against the other. So if I'm buying a quality product, then I'm willing to pay a bit more. If I am, buying a quality product, or if I'm not, if I want something which is affordable, I'm okay to compromise on the quality. Or if I want something convenient, I'm okay not to get the variety. So I think that was the context probably 20 years ago. Today we are living in a place where consumers want it all. They want something which is convenient. It's not within 20 minutes, it's within 10 minutes. They want to choose from a wide assortment, which is there. So it's not just that I want to get it in 10 minutes and I only have one brand in a particular category to choose. They want choice there. And they also want value. They don't want to pay too much for it. So I think from a consumer sense, this is truly, nirvana, right? You get it all. You get the variety, you get the convenience, and you get value as well. But for, manufacturers, retailers, this is what poses the most significant challenge. How do you bring together, assortment, quality, convenience, and value all at the same time? And I think this is what retail is probably grappling with. And retailers are occupying one or the other two, positions, and then seeing how they deliver it. From our business, what we've obviously seen is the biggest trend in retail today, and especially in grocery retail, is this whole thing on convenience, driven by what quick commerce is able to offer to consumers. And that has, it's not just a fashion, it's just something which is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it does impact not just the business, it impacts how consumers are shopping today as opposed to how they were shopping even 5 years ago. So we find that typically 5 years ago, we had a huge spike in sales at the beginning of the month. People would go and buy their monthly grocery shopping, and therefore the basket sizes were much bigger. Today, consumers are used to ordering, if not 2 times a day, at least 5 times in a week. So there is no longer that need to stock up, which means that your average ticket sizes are going down. So I think that's convenience is the real big mega trend which is there, and all of us are, if not pivoting, but we are adjusting our business models to ensure that we also offer. So for example, Spencer's, which is a largely brick and mortar outlet, we've got now a quick commerce app and a proposition in Calcutta called Jiffy, and we deliver in 30 minutes anywhere within Calcutta. And we've seen very strong, adoption of this without having to spend too much money on marketing or acquisition, because that's where naturally the consumer has evolved. So our offline consumers are now using our online platform, and we're doing very well on that. So I think that's something which you will need to kind of adopt. The other big trend obviously is, and I'm sure we'll talk about, is all around this premiumization, experiences, and better for you categories. So some of the categories which we have seen, which have done very well post-pandemic, continue to do well, are all your better for you products. I mean, categories like dry fruits and all have just gone through the roof. So I think these are the 2 big trends which I see in retail. And of course, we are evolving with that when it comes to either the assortment or making sure that we also offer convenience without really sacrificing on the value as well. Yeah.
Great, thanks for that, Anuj. In fact, quick commerce, I was waiting to hear that, given how much consumers are moving towards convenience. So just an audience poll. I mean, how many of you use quick commerce? Can you just raise your hand? Yeah, so look at that, right?
Ask how many don't use.
Yeah, how many don't use? That's probably going to be very telling. Yeah, so just a few hands, right? So it is something which is not just a channel, but it's also having business model implications, right? Because we were discussing about new product development. A lot of companies now have SKUs which are very specific to quick commerce, right? And the consumer is able to discover that. We spoke of awareness, and therefore it's also enabling that, right? So there are some fundamental changes in the marketplace. It'll be good to understand Dadus, right, Muskan? It's such an, I mean, it's what, 30 years old in terms of a brand legacy, and it'll be good to understand its evolution, right? From a family-based organization to a more retail, setup-driven organization. It'll be good to understand how you've seen the consumer evolve, right? And what are some of the key trends that you think are relevant from a consumer standpoint?
Because you mentioned Gen Z quite a few times, and I myself am Gen Z, so I'm going to start with that. So definitely Gen Z value time over money, and if there is something that can happen quickly, they don't mind paying a little extra for that. That may happen. Convenience, as everyone has mentioned it quite a few times, convenience not just digitally, but if there's something available on the same road, they don't mind doing an offline shopping. Just being available makes a very big difference. And the consumer today, a lot of times, they themselves might not know what they want. So there's a very big need to anticipate the need of the consumer. So in our kind of business, there's a lot of seasonality. And with every festival, there is something new that you need to introduce that the consumer may not know that they even require. So cracking that right mix, the right SKU that you introduce, and giving that option to them that is right in terms of like gifting, or it might be a personal consumption, but that I think is a very good space for us to have creative, to have creativity, innovation, introducing new SKUs and new products that the customer has a need for, but they themselves don't know. So that's for every industry to crack on their own. That gives a convenience in selection. So that's a different kind of anticipation and, anticipating customers' needs that is required. Other than that, there is being a Gen Z as a consumer, we definitely love to go out. The problem currently with retail is we're being very traditional. Every store is shelves and racks and counters and all that. Something that you see outside of India, and even with a few retail brands in India that have created an experience in retail shopping. If you talk about a food hall or Whole Foods in America, where you do your regular grocery shopping, but there's a whole experience attached to it which you can't have digitally. So for that, people will step out. So I think that's a space that we need to still explore, and as retailers, that's something, in 10 stores, one of your stores can be an experience center. And that could be a new trend that the Gen Z will definitely appreciate.
Great. So convenience and experience. Deepak, what are some of the trends that you're seeing? And it will also be useful to hear from you on tier 2, right? Beyond our cities, we are seeing demand there too. So it'll be good to hear. I'm sorry. Mohit, sorry. Didn't mean Deepak. Right? So Baskin Robbins, it'll be good to understand from your side.
Anand, I think I will start with, first, what has stayed consistent for the brand. Very much with Vipul's line, when he said that the brand is 70 years old and has survived for 70 years. In our case, the brand has survived for 80 years. And we've been in India for more than 30 years. Obviously, there is something which the brands are doing right to survive for either 70 years or 80 years or 100 years. To me, that's the most important thing. And that one important thing is what connects the brand with the customer, whether it's the quality or the value or the range or whatever it is. I think staying true to your core proposition is what endears a brand to a customer. To me, that cannot change. What can change is the narratives around, based on how consumers are evolving. Today, a customer may like a flavor, a particular flavor, may not like a particular flavor, etc. You can keep changing the outwardly appearance of the brand, but the core, the crux of the brand must not and cannot change. To me, that's the most consistent thing. Now coming back to your question as to what has really changed, are we seeing traction in tier 2 towns, etc., etc. The one big change, and I think it has been articulated pretty well by most, and the way I choose to look at it is that there is increasing democratization of choices that's happening today in households. If you go back, if you rewind back 30 years in your life or 20 years in your life, decisions as a family were taken singularly, as a single family unit. Today, if there are 4 family members and you're ordering food, chances are that 4 people will be ordering different things for themselves. And that's happening not just in one family. You think you're a dysfunctional family, but it's happening everywhere. To me, that's the power of choice that a consumer has today. And that's what's driving decisions, and that's what's driving product choices, and that's how businesses need to repivot. So that's the first and more important thing. Obviously, that has led to convenience, becoming a buzzword today. Increasingly, we just saw in the room that maybe 90% of the room is buying online, and they want things delivered to them very quickly. So yes, the narratives around the brand have to change. Some of the business models have to change. Our channels have to have to change. That's as a result of the emerging trend. Similarly, I think Anuj touched upon premiumization. And I think that's a very relevant trend. We see increasingly consumers wanting the best of both worlds. They want the values of a more premium product, but at a value price. And that's not easy to deliver. And that's where brands must innovate either their products or their services to be able to offer both. Is this relevant only to tier 1 customers, or is it also happening in tier 2 cities, etc.? As a brand, I think we are increasingly resonating with customers not just in metro cities and tier 1 cities, but also in tier 2 cities. We are today available in 300 cities, and we are rocking. And the reason is because there is something in the brand proposition that is resonating with customers in tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities, etc. In fact, our observation has been, our experience has been that in tier 2, tier 3 cities where people are not really stressed for time as much as they are in a Mumbai or a Bangalore where you spend, 2 to 3 hours of your life stuck in traffic. That's not the case in the smaller cities. People have more time to spend either with their families or with their group of friends, etc. And therefore, and business is therefore much better. Also, we have seen business to be a lot more resilient in the smaller cities than we have seen. We have seen a lot more stress in the metro and tier 1 cities and a lot less of that in the smaller cities.
Great. So thanks for that. In fact, some of these aspects around premiumization, for example, right? In the morning, again, you all saw that slide which showed refrigerators, right? People want to consume double-door refrigerators at the entry point itself. And now you have the EMI ecosystem to support that. You look at cars. It's not the hatchbacks, but it's the SUVs which have really grown in demand, right? So premiumization is something that's here to stay, and it's linked to what everybody said in terms of rising aspiration, right? People want, they have access because of e-commerce and all of that making products available, and hence this was a very useful discussion. I can see that we've stuck to time, so thank you so much for that. The first section on how the consumer is changing now comes to a conclusion. We will move to the next section, which is on understanding how they have touched upon it in terms of how their organizations are also changing, how data, AI, that's something we didn't hear much about, so it'll be good to understand how technology is helping the brand stay relevant. And also, given the services business, people, right? A lot of you have mentioned that. Ultimately, the moment of truth is when the consumer gets a service from a person, right? So how do you do that last mile of management in terms of giving them the right training, expertise, and retaining all that talent, right? So we will look at organizational aspects now. So now we'll probably start with some of the products. So we can start with food, perhaps. So you want to go first? Dadus, how has your own organization evolution happened? Muskan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Of course, what we used to do very manually 32 years back can't happen. We can't operate like that or grow like that today. There has to be lesser dependency on people and more consistency and more of predictability. So that comes with tech. Having said that, we are into services, and people are, they are never replaceable completely by tech. Investing in tech is one aspect, but investing in people who can handle that tech is also very important. You can have all the data, but then there has to be the right person who can make sense of it and also use it in the right way. The people that we bring into the organization might not come with all of those skills, so assuring them of the growth will help us retain them, and training them and giving them the right skill set that makes them feel that they are growing will also, in turn, it's a give and take. Finally, there are people who will, if they're growing, they will want to contribute more. So definitely tech is important in terms of inventory planning, in terms of anticipating the needs of the season, but also the right people behind it is much more important.
Sure. So we'll stick to people, right? And maybe, Spurti, the next question is, again, linked to people, right? You could start with that, and maybe you can also talk about the other areas in terms of how your organization is changing. But how important is it to train people, to attract and retain them for a business such as yours?
So again, salons are very people-intensive, and the proof of the pudding for us is consistency in service delivery. Now, whether a client goes to a Kemp's Corner branch or goes to a Juhu, the service delivery should not differ. And I think that is, of course, for us a very lofty goal because of the transitionary nature of human capital. And education is something that is, that takes a large part of our time and energy, and we have to constantly train, and which is where actually we do a lot of collaboration with our professional hair care brands, skin care brands, and leverage education. We obviously also take advantage of all the international, technical artists who come to India through the product partners and train our teams. And of course, there's masterclass and there's competitions and all of that, which gives, a very good exposure to our teams. But having said that, to keep this as a constant in the organization. It's like you're constantly on a treadmill because, again, this industry sees a lot of attrition. Though of course BBlunt, because it's a brand started by hairdressers and the culture is very pro hairdressers, we have the lowest attrition in the industry. But of course, I mean, as a CEO, I constantly feel I'm on a treadmill, just running and trying to keep things in motion. Yeah. So yeah, I hope I've answered your question.
Sure. Vipul, we'll stick to the same industry. How do you think data and AI and personalization has played a role in Lakmé's growth and evolution and other aspects in terms of how you just use technology?
Yeah. So exactly as Purti mentioned, whatever we can keep discussing, deciding. In a salon, the delivery will happen through that person there, right? So unlike a product company where you get your product mix right, you get your media right, you will have success. Here, everything has to be done by that individual, and becomes really, really important that the person can actually deliver the promise the brand is trying to make. There are obviously aspects of data and AI which we are increasing, trying to bring together. The starting point being, we are now very close to creating one view of our customer. And by one view, I don't mean only Lakmé Salon, but Lakmé overall. So if a lady goes to Anud's store and buys a Lakmé lipstick, and she comes back and then takes a service from a Lakmé Salon, we want to be part of the journey throughout. Because you then know what are the things which actually work for her, and both businesses can stand to benefit out of each other. The other big one is as Purti mentioned, our business does have very high amounts of attrition. So we now have our full-fledged academies, but there again, using technology and ensuring that all the people who come in new, they exactly know what are the SOPs. If a customer currently has XYZ issues, what is it that you should be recommending, are increasingly becoming more data-led, right? So they all have their small handheld devices. Basis your analysis, which will happen through an 8-step process, there will be an output which will come out of it. So ensuring that while people remain important, but through technology, they have enough aid so that all the people who walk into a Lakmé salon end up getting more or less the similar kind of experience. So one is the overall one customer view, where we try and ensure that at all touch points where the lady is interacting with Lakmé, I do take signals and I use it for a better experience. Another is for all the people who currently are there giving a service in the salon, how do I use technology and ensure that using that there is more standardization and hopefully a indulgent experience that I'm able to provide. Have I answered your question?
Yeah, I mean, standardization, consistency, hearing a lot of it across these different categories, right? Now, it'll be useful, Anuj, to understand. I mean, we talk so much about AI, we talk about technology. It is a service-based business with people. So it will be good to understand how you have evolved, right? If you were to look back and see what your journey has been, and what are some of those key investment areas, right, where you are investing for the future to keep your brand relevant for the changes in the marketplace.
So I think, look, everyone mentioned it, everyone knows, technology is a great enabler. It's an enabler for, efficiency. It's a huge enabler for delivering a lot of personalization, whether it be in terms of targeting, consumers or your marketing. And I think everyone has to start embedding it. But I don't see that as, it does not eliminate the need where human intervention is required. And I think as we're talking about in service industry, even we've seen in our offline part of our business, that consumer experience, that consumer touch is still very important. So I think the biggest thing for us as an organization is how do we strike the right balance between where you need to embed technology, where you need to use technology to actually deliver a far superior human-based delivered experience. I think, that's really where the crux is. And I'll give you a very simple example. I mean, all of us, in different services, you have a, customer care center and a service center or a call center. I can bet, I've been experiencing this in credit cards or this thing. You have to go through a multitude of IVRs. Press 1 for this, press 2 for this, press 3 for this, press 9 for this. And ultimately, I think when you press 9 is when you can speak to an agent. It's a very efficient way. But I think in certain scenarios, is that the right consumer experience you're building. So I think those are the kind of considered decisions one has to make. Now, of course, on the other hand, we have a huge amount of data available on which consumer bought what product at what point of time. And we were not necessarily using it 2-3 years ago because it was difficult to compile it and target. So I remember somebody came and told me, hey, you know what, I'm a Jain vegetarian living in Calcutta, and every month I get a Spencer's promotional message says 20% off on Hilsa fish. So he says, can't you guys get this basic right? It's absolutely true. That's where 2 years ago still marketing was a bit of a broad-based broadcast which was happening. Today we've developed that, and again, I think the biggest thing with technology is A, you can do it, and B, it is not that expensive anymore because all of this is widely available. So I think, using technology as a way of either enhancing the whole experience or helping productivity is where I would do. I don't see a lot of it happening in terms of replacing it. So one of the things which we've always looked around, and you see that, in places outside of India, scan and go, self-checkout. We've looked at that, but we don't believe we are at that right point. So I think using technology judiciously and at the right points is something which is very critical. We're using that in our offline business, like I said. Everything on our CRM today is absolutely precision, scientific, personalized, individual. N is equal to 1. That's what we're working on. Similarly, in the online business, yes, of course, everything is, technology is powering a lot of that. We're using a lot of regression-based artificial intelligence models to see even where you can get your supply chain right in terms of what you're ordering. So I think the ability to analyze data in real time or near real time and then make predictive models, that's something which is, easily available today. And I think that's what we're integrating into our business.
Great, thanks Anuj. In fact, what we heard Vipul say, the foundation, one view of customer, one view of product, one view of inventory, that's getting all of your data together. And then, Anuj, your insight in terms of getting value from that data, right? Whether it's recommendations on the supply side or better recommendations on what you should send to the consumer. We did a study where we saw where the Gen AI use cases are, where people are doing POCs, and about 65% of it was in marketing, right? So that you're able to target the consumer a lot more efficiently, right? And the other important point is also to look at recommendations on the sales side. You know who your consumer is. I think Vipul made that point. Product plus service, integrated, I look at the consumer and I recommend what he can buy basis his past purchases, right? So these are all probably lessons which can apply across industries. But the start is that consumer journey, the one view of customer, and getting your data in place. And then moving to the analytics and the AI layer. So we'll move to Mohit, you. So how is it that what changes are you making in your
I think
organization?
apart from whatever Anuj and Vipul have spoken about, the only other thing I would like to add is that as a manufacturer that is making, let's say, product for thousands and millions of consumers, the one thing that we change in our organization is our ability to continuously surprise the customer. To us, that has been one of the core values, that we as a brand espouse. And it's the ability to surprise him, the ability to continuously introduce newness in our offering, etc. And some of it may not be possible with existing equipment or machinery that you have. So the ability to continuously invest in new equipment, not just adding to your capacity to produce more, but adding to your ability to produce different kinds of products. So at a point of time, let's say 10 years ago, people would buy large family packs, and some of them still do. But increasingly, as customer choices become more and more personal, right? You may want products which are smaller in size, and so on and so forth. So yesterday you wanted a cone with an ice cream scoop on it. Tomorrow you might want a canopy with a little bit of an ice cream which is bite-sized. So, and you may not be able to produce that with the same machine, and therefore you need different kinds of equipment to be brought in. And for us, that is one of the key investments that continues to happen in the business. The second is, of course, around data analytics, and I think both Vipul and Anuj have spoken extensively about it, and that's something very, very key to us.
Great. So thanks for that, Mohit. Deepak, we'll end with you. We've covered quite a lot of things, right? Data, tech, people. What about new products, right? What about, you spoke about SKUs that you're developing for quick commerce, right? So what are some of these other changes that you're making in the way you go to the market and the offering that you give as a brand, right? So that will be useful to understand, apart from anything else that you'd like to add on the people and technology dimension.
No, of course, a very relevant question, because as I mentioned, the awareness about the lingerie need has gone up significantly. And now there are multiple innovations happening in the space, like not just by the fabric or the, the raw material we use, even the technology advancement has happened and the product innovation has happened, right? So I'll just give you one example. Now in trend is seamless products. People are preferring, lingerie which doesn't have, any stitches around that. We just launched one product a couple of years back, which is a slip-on bra. There is no stitch, there is no hook and eye. Polyamide product, and it's a great success, right? And similarly, there are other products, and every other brand is doing that. All the seamless bonded garments is the need of the hour, and that's what everybody is doing. So that's a big change which we see in the industry. Few years back, 10, 15 years back, it would be all cotton products which people will prefer for their innerwear. Now that cotton love has gone out, and there is a, if it is a daily wear product, I will still prefer a cotton product. For my special occasion, I'll have a different product, and that awareness is there. So all of the lingerie brands are doing those innovations and those experiments, I would say. And that's what helping us to get the incremental sales, incremental revenues. So yes, that's what's happening in the industry.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So freshness, and now you're saying innovation, which is relevant to changing consumer trends, right? So on that note, we have about 7.5 minutes for question and answer. So we'll end this section. Happy to open the floor to the audience for their questions, right? We can take about 3 questions. Any questions? There's one there.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah.
You can introduce yourself and ask the question.
Yes, sure. So my name is Pooja. I work with Amazon India, and my question is especially for Lakmé and BBlunt. From from quick commerce, we've entered into quick service as well with Urban Company offering saloon services at home, right? So what is your point of view? Because it's also convenience, as mentioned, Gen Z would want everything as easy and as fast as possible, right? Versus for me to go to a BBlunt salon or a Lakmé salon would take an extra hour with the same price. So what is your point of view with the consumers shifting to quick service?
Vipul, you want to take it?
Oh, sure.
So if I've understood your question right, I'll split it as service and retail. So for example, salons are experience hubs, right? Now when somebody wants like a self-care escape, okay, that's when they want a physical space, they want the experience, they want the relaxation, and there is no replacement for that. So if you look at salons, they largely will have a physical footprint, okay? And when you talk of retail, that's when, we have to employ tools of e-commerce. And thankfully for BBlunt, we have a parent company, which is, an e-commerce first company. So we, post the acquisition, we definitely have seen that our retail sales have propelled 4x. And that's been a good, transition for us. While, of course, it's also reinforced BBlunt as a millennial brand. Having said that, yeah, for service, I think even during COVID, we tried employing tools like digital consultations, but the moment the lockdown was called out and clients started coming for, in-salon consultations. So I think because we are in a very high-touch, kind of business, the physical presence seems irreplaceable for us. Vipul, you want to
Okay,
add something?
I'll just add. So yes, indeed, when you get a urban company, it does take away some of the footfalls. Some of the basic services, people are money rich, time poor, right? So time has a huge value, and clearly that makes sense. But it's a continuum. So the way I look at it is, there will be certain basic services for which maybe the lady used to come to a Lakmé Salon earlier, but she's no longer coming to me. But at the same time, can I create those kind of services in skin, in hair, in makeup, in nails, for which earlier maybe she wasn't coming, but now I'm in the consideration. So kind of skin services that I offer now are very different from what I used to offer 5 years back, right? So the kind of treatments that can be done, or on hair, the kind of high-end things that can be done. So that can only and only happen in a salon kind of setup with really trained experts. So think of it as a continuum where there'll be a chunk of people who'll keep moving out, but our job is to ensure that we keep stretching it in such a way that more than the lapsers, I have new trials who come and spend a lot of time and money at my salon.
Got
Have I
it.
answered that? Thank you.
Great. So, any other questions? Okay, so if there are no further questions, we'll conclude the panel. So thank you so much for this very engaging discussion. Consumers are obviously changing a lot, but brands need to be true to their purpose, but make pivots to these changes, was the conclusion of the first session. And in the second session, we spoke about the need for consistency in what the brand stands for, and using technology to make it more efficient, to make it more cost effective, but at the same time, not do away with the people, but play technology with people to give the experience that the consumer currently needs. So with that, thank you so much. And thank you to the audience too for what was a very engaging conversation. Thanks a lot.